Together we learn, together we grow, together we heal, together we flow. Be cool, every teacher, every school. 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 Be cool, be cool.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Todd Scholl. I serve as the lead learner for the SCEA's Center for Educator Wellness and Learning. We call ourselves Cool, and you can learn more about Cool and what we do, our mission to improve the inner and outer lives of educators at cool.us. That's CEWL.us. All the live streams that we do and all the content that we produce is put on that web page, along with information about our Cool Induction Institute, started and led by our Dr. Marcella Weinsnyder. And we also have information about our mindfulness retreats, which we'll talk about a little bit after tonight's guest, and some upcoming programming that we have as well. So everything you need to know is at cool.us. And of course, we're brought to you by the SCEA, the South Carolina Education Association. We are the movement for public school educators in South Carolina. And if you're interested in joining the SCEA, you can do that right now at jointhescea.org. Great time to join as we start a new year. And I want to wish everybody a happy new year. I hope that this year has started well. I'm here in Greenville this week, and it looks like we are going to get some snow this week, which will be interesting. So everybody in the area, in the upstate and maybe to the Midlands, please make sure you stay safe, and hope you enjoy that snow, which is not too common in South Carolina. So we got to enjoy it while we get it. Well, tonight's guest was suggested by a colleague of mine at the SCEA, Mary Rita Watson. She suggested our guest, and he's going to be joining us tonight for a cool conversation. His name is Mike Burgess. He's an esteemed educator with nearly 3 decades of experience as a public high school history teacher in South Carolina. He teaches at the Center for Law and Global Policy Development at River Bluff High School, where he inspires juniors and seniors to explore leadership, law, politics, and foreign affairs. A passionate historian and award-winning educator, Mike has been recognized as the 2023 South Carolina History Teacher of the Year by the Gilder Lehrman Foundation and has received multiple prestigious awards from organizations like the Daughters of the American Revolution and Sons of the American Revolution. And beyond the classroom, he's deeply engaged in his community through his church and history programs, sharing his love of South Carolina's rich heritage. So we are excited to welcome to our cool conversation tonight, Mr. Michael Burgess. How are you doing tonight, Mike?
Good. Thank you for having me on, and I hope you're enjoying my hometown. I'm originally from Greenville and a proud graduate of Travelers Rest High School, and had a chance to go back there over winter break with the basketball team I'm assistant coach for, and enjoy downtown Greenville,
which is beautiful.
Changed.
It's absolutely. So. I remember going back. I remember going to Greenville in like the early to mid '90s for a wedding, and I thought, it's okay. And so I didn't get a great taste of it. And then I came back, maybe it was 10 years later, maybe 15 years later, and they built the bridge and done the park downtown. And I mean, what a beautiful city, and a really growing city and a vibrant city. And I love visiting Greenville, and Travelers Rest is also beautiful. We go out to the state parks, go through Travelers Rest, and just a gorgeous part of the state. So,
yeah, absolutely. And any chance I get to go back up that way, since both my parents have passed away, I don't get to get up there as much as I would like. But I take advantage of it, and would love to actually go up there and speak to some teachers when I get a chance. So it's definitely, I'm envious of you at this point being up there.
Is there anything that I didn't cover in the introduction that you'd like to share with folks about your background before we get started?
Well, when you say 3 decades, that does sound like an awful long time. And as I tell young teachers, when I started 30 years ago, I was blonde hair, blue eye, cute little nose. And you see what the pressures and challenges of teaching will do to you now that my students think I look like Emperor Palpatine for the Star Wars series.
You had me at Star Wars. I think we're both probably around the same era. So
Yeah, let's
I'm
go.
also finishing my 30th year in public education this year. So, and a huge Star Wars nerd. But we won't digress into the Star Wars world. Maybe that we'll save that for another live stream. So I read through this document that you wrote, and I guess maybe it's a presentation that you do as well called "The Soul of America." And I was really impressed with that. And I think this conversation that we're having around the teaching of history is so important because I think too many times, and you indicate this in your work, the teaching of history gets politicized rather than just taking an objective look at here are the things that happened and looking throughout our history and seeing the things that we should be proud of and seeing the things that were mistakes and that were cruel or that were wrong that were immoral that happened throughout our history and confronting the full sort of panorama of what it means to be American. I think is so important for young people as they're growing up in this country to get the full truth. And we don't want them to go around being ashamed to be American, of course, but we also want them to understand the realities of what happened. So, talk a little bit about how you view American history and the importance of sort of taking the politics out of it in terms of trying to sway it one way or the other, and it not being as objective as it should be.
Oh, absolutely. And I would say over three decades, my guiding principle has been this: history must be taught fully, fairly, and honestly, or else we have no way to understand the past, with no chance of explaining the present, and absolutely no hope of shaping a brighter future. And when you teach it fully, fairly, honestly, you're not teaching it from a far right or far left
Right.
perspective. And that's what we have been in a battle we have now been engaged in, I would say, the last 5 years, where extremists on both sides of the ideological fence are trying to manipulate our schools to teach from their perspective and eliminate the other perspective versus adhering to the principle of fully, fairly,
Yeah,
honestly.
and I think one of the things that I like about in reading your work that I really connect with is this idea that we need to have an open exchange of ideas. That yes, we need to be sensitive, but it's like we need to have. I think what happens is a lot of teachers are so scared of getting their hands slapped from one side or the other
Right.
that then they just avoid anything remotely controversial, whether it's a subject or a debate or a conversation, and then students kind of are really the ultimate losers in that because they don't get an opportunity to learn how to express a point of view and to also hear an opposing point of view and to determine whether or not they're going to assimilate that new information, whether that's going to reinforce their current view of things or help make them think about things differently. And I think that really is a huge loss because that critical reasoning piece is so important in our capacity to also take on and hear things that we don't agree with and learn to deal with that, learn to build some resilience around that and deal with that.
And with that, one thing I open all of my history classes with the very first day, you're doing nuts and bolts, but we also read a poem by Mickey Scott Bay called Invitation to Brave Space, to create a brave space. And I pound that principle home that, every day in here when we're studying United States history is not going to be a Hallmark card
Right.
moment. That we again, when we say fully, fairly, honestly, that means in embracing and encountering some of the more difficult aspects of American history with an understanding at the end of the day, it helps our students graduate understanding what America
Right.
is and what it means to be an American citizen. so they can be an active, informed, involved citizenry when you and I retire to Greenville, maybe, and live out the rest of our lives, knowing that our community and our state and nation will be in good
Right.
hands.
I've used this metaphor, and and you said you're a coach, and so this really hit home for me when I think about like Dabo Swinney or Shane Beamer, and the game's over, and then that week they're going over with the team what happened in the game. They're not just
Right.
gonna say, "Here are all the highlights. Look at the highlights. Look at all the great things that happened." They are gonna look at that. Here's what we did right, and here's what
Right.
we did wrong.
Right.
And they're doing that. Not the wrong part is not about I want the team to learn to hate themselves, and I want them to hate
Mhm.
the Gamecocks or the Tigers or whatever. It's about how do we take both the things we did right and the things we did wrong and examine those things so that we can become a better team. And I think, like, to me, I would think that American history really should be that kind of an approach where we look at it all and say, how do we continue to build on the promise of America? So, what are your thoughts on that?
Oh, absolutely. And when you asked, maybe one of the opening day conversations is, well, why should we study United States history? And you're going to get the answer immediately. Well, to learn from our mistakes. Well, when you study American history, it's also learning from our
Right.
successes. And since you used the coach analogy, and I'm in my 31st year as a basketball coach, not a big fan of Dabo Swinney or Clemson, but
Yeah.
that's okay. I had to endure that in Greenville. But I say, well, it's not just learning, it's learning from our successes and how to repeat those
Right.
successes. And it's not just learning from our mistakes, but how do we, gain something from those mistakes that if the same situation approaches again, we can take another course, a different course, and make a positive difference in the lives of
Right.
others.
And one of the concerns I think we have, education advocates, is we're seeing a lot of politicization around the teaching of history. And as you
Mhm.
mentioned earlier, and one of the things I'm concerned about is this sort of censoring and this idea that it's not really an American history class unless you're just fully patriotic and or fully like just like talking up the good points and kind of censoring or ignoring the things that we've done wrong. I have a lot of concern about that because I'm concerned that future generations of American history students aren't going to get that full truth because there's some folks who they want to build this narrative that anytime you talk about some of the dark parts of our history, that you're somehow unpatriotic or anti-American. What are your thoughts on that?
Right. Well, and I think there's two camps, and I think there's one, and they're both extreme. And we all, from American history, we know that the extremes are the minority, numerically the minority, but they're often a very loud minority. And so when you look at social media, both extremes are hitting it from a very loud megaphone, yet numerically they do not represent the vast majority of us out there. But you do have one side that wants to completely whitewash history to the point that it is a Hallmark card moment every day. And it's like an episode, if you remember this cartoon of Liberty's Kids on
Hmm.
PBS. But there's also the side that wants to cancel a lot of American history and force us to look at American history through a very present time point of view, applying present standards to past deeds and condemn those from the past who don't live up to our standards
Right.
today. And so you get that. I describe it in the document you're talking about, the speech I give, the Soul of America. And I've given this close to 30 times around the state since March of 2023, when I had to come up with a speech to give the state Daughters of the American Revolution convention upon receiving their State Teacher of the Year award. And I mentioned being the culture war pinata. It's the title of
Right.
this podcast because if you go through a normal week, on Monday the far left is going to hit you. On Tuesday the far right is going to hit you. On Wednesday the media is going to hit you. On Thursday maybe social media hits you, and then Friday is take your pick. that you're either going to get hit from the State Department of Education with some new regulation that is impossible to implement or enforce, or you're going to get hit from your district office that wants every lesson plan you've ever written for the last 5 years for every day, and they want it on their desk by 4 o'clock Friday, and it's noon on Friday. Or you get hit by the parent of the golden child who feels like they understand history and want to tell you why it's wrong to teach that George Washington didn't defeat the North at Gettysburg. And it's this pinata getting hit on all sides feel. And those of us out there, those of us teaching history, and I would say literature as well, it's almost a feeling like being George Armstrong Custer at Little Bighorn, and you're standing on top of the hill, and all the bullets and arrows are fired at you, and you know there's no hope of success.
Yeah, I think that your point is well taken, and I think when I was teaching journalism, and I wanted to lean into, like, we talked about the news and we talked about bias, different types of bias in the news, for example. And I wanted to encourage my kids to lean into and talk about controversial issues. And I think sometimes we're just so scared to dive into that because of exactly what you're describing, where you're afraid of being, creating a controversy, and then all of a sudden you've got someone breathing down your neck. And social media, and one of the things I've been taking a hard look at my use of social media, because I've seen it get so much worse in the past few years, which is the algorithms favor the manufacturing of outrage. So anytime someone can attack somebody else for a point of view, that post seems to get a lot of traction. And then everybody else feels like they have to pile on and say they like it or they agree with it, and then it proliferates, and then it rewards this idea of like people being scared to even throw out an opinion that might not fall under one particular orthodoxy or the other. And so then we wind up with with social media that tends to be geared towards the left or the right, instead of having a marketplace of ideas and being able to, as adults, have these conversations. So I don't know, what are your thoughts about how social media and the media in general are playing a role in what you're describing?
It and they are absolutely killing us. And in their effort to get views and get likes and shares and all that, what they're doing is undermining the fabric of our community and our state and our nation. I mean, we are every bit as divided as perhaps we learned about from our parents, for you and I, our parents, during the 1960s. I'm not prepared to go back to the 1860s yet. Fortunately, we're not there yet. But certainly in their effort to make a buck, they are using our students. They are using our teachers, they are using our schools, and they are using it in such a manner that it is undermining the foundations of our republic.
Yeah. And it seems to be fed, I don't have the data to support this, but it seems to be at least amplified intentionally by foreign adversaries, this division that we have. So anything that's creates division, it would be very easy for a foreign adversary to go in with bots and to invest a lot of time and resources in amplifying the divisive messages, so that then the most extreme versions of that we envision about the other side, those are the ones that come to the top of the pile. Those extreme voices come to the top, and then we assume, well, that voice must represent all people who are on the right or all people who are on the left, and then we think of them as it's this tribalistic idea, and they're the other and they're the enemy, and then we create this division in our country that's unsustainable.
I don't think you even have to go with a foreign adversary. I don't even think you have to look at a foreign adversary. I think you can look right here in the state of South Carolina. Whether it's the Freedom Caucus, and their efforts to undermine education. I mean, my school
Right.
district, Lexington 1, was sued by the Freedom Caucus. And why were we really sued? We were really sued so they could get some attention and get the spotlight put on them on Fox News.
Right.
You know, you don't have to go overseas. You can look at our current superintendent of education who ran her campaign on the basis of this massive CRT
Right.
conspiracy that had infiltrated our schools. I literally thought I was looking at something from 1949
Right.
or 1950
The Red Scare. Yeah.
in the period of
Yeah.
McCarthyism and the Red Scare.
Yeah.
And that was the whole basis of that campaign.
Yeah.
The whole basis.
100%. And I posted this sarcastically. I was like, it's amazing how quickly CRT went away once she became superintendent of education. You know, we don't even hear about that much anymore because exactly it was just a political tool. It was just a ginned up narrative to scare certain segment of the voting population to vote for her, and there was no substance to it. And if you tried to
No.
drill down on it and ask for examples, the examples they would give really had nothing to do with critical race theory, because those of us who are working in public schools and are in and out of them every day understand that that's just not happening, that there is no critical race theory being taught in schools in
Right, right.
South Carolina.
There isn't, but that was the pathway to getting elected. In fact, I had one of her campaign aides, one of her high up campaign aides, uh, telling me, "Hey, you know, we're just using this to win the election. We've got to win the election."
Right.
But the problem is now you have someone in the most important, position in terms of public education in South Carolina, and they are completely and totally unqualified to address the problems that face us
Right.
today. That it very much is a situation of the old story, you know, maybe that we were told as kids of the fox guarding the hen house.
Yeah.
And that honestly, for those of us in the profession, we're just looking at the calendar and looking at the clock and hoping we can get the fox out of the hen house before serious irreparable damage is done to being able to tell the story of America fully, fairly, and honestly.
Yeah, it is absolutely essential that teachers speak up and use their voices, and I'm so thankful that that you're leading the way with that, because um, I think no matter where you stand politically, all of us should have a commitment to truth. You know, all of us should have a commitment to look, some of American history, it may be dark, and some of it may not make us look good, but I want my children to know. I want them to know everything, you know, within reason. I want them to know what happened. I don't need a sugar coated version of it. I also don't need like a, you know, America's evil. Just all we're going to do is talk about everything negative version. I want
Yeah,
just a
right.
full confrontation with the entire tapestry of American history, and I can't.
And
Yeah,
that's why
go ahead. Sorry.
And that's why this debate over PragerU or 1619 Project or the Zen Education Project is absolutely ridiculous, because no history teacher of merit and talent are going to use any of those things. You're going to use primary source data. You're going to teach your kids how to analyze primary sources, how to discuss the historical context and the audience and the purpose and the point of view. And you're going to make sure that you're not telling them what to think. You're teaching them how to
That's
think,
it.
how to think.
Right.
Where whether it's 1619 or PragerU, they're teaching you what to think. And that has no place in our classroom.
Right.
But sadly, you know, within a couple of months, the same person who ran an entire campaign based on the Red Scare of the 21st century killed off the chance to offer AP African American Studies, which I'll be honest with you, we have some significant African American history sites on our campus. I was looking forward to maybe having an opportunity to teach that.
Yeah.
And then you're going to partner with and partner with PragerU. And I watched some of the videos. Some of the videos I watched taught me that actually nuclear waste is good for you. So I need to go take a bath over at the Savannah River site in polluted water. And that Candace Owens taught me that the Democratic Party, and I'm a Republican, I am a McCain, Reagan, moderate to conservative Republican. I was Ronald Reagan in the 8th grade. But it taught that the Democratic Party, Candace Owens, now thus your professor at PragerU, that the Democratic Party is responsible for every evil thing that has ever happened to African Americans in this country.
Right.
That's the type of absurdity we're dealing with now in the classroom.
Right.
And the fear that has been created by the new instructional materials regulation, by the controversial issues proviso, to where now you have lawyers of school districts trying. They're not going to call the shot in my classroom. It's fully, fairly, honestly, or I'm gone.
Yeah.
Trying to limit and restrict what you teach because they're afraid of the district getting sued.
Yeah.
And that's just how we're going to move this state and our communities forward.
I often say, so I'm further on the left of the political spectrum, not that it is really relevant or that it matters too much, but I've always said that Ronald Reagan, I don't think would have a home in today's Republican Party or in certainly not in like the Freedom Caucus or anything like. I mean, he would be far too left, far too progressive to have a home in what amounts to today's GOP. So it is concerning, and you have this sort of just this continuing to divide us more deeply as a country when we go to these extremes. Particularly, I think when we when we promote just outright falsehoods. Like there was not only the CRT falsehood, but then this idea that there's litter boxes in schools and that kids are encouraged to be animals and things like that. I mean, just outright falsehoods that wind up being amplified on social media and repeated enough that many people in the public go to the polls and vote based upon just a completely fictional concept of what's happening in schools.
We had a school board candidate, I kid you not, their first video, his video was about litter boxes in our schools in our district. Now, my students, my senior law center students, every year, every election put on a candidate forum, and generally all reputable candidates show up. He didn't show up, didn't really have an excuse. And I was like really excited to get him there early and give him a tour of our school and see if we could find the litter boxes that supposedly exist.
Right. Yeah. Please show me where that is. I mean, it's so ridiculous. And it's amazing to me that the general public hears that and enough of them apparently believe that stuff. Madison Bray asked, could we be required to use those videos and content? I think she's referencing PragerU and that kind of thing.
Yes, yeah, Madison, and thank you for joining us, Madison. I know Madison well. At the present time, we have no idea what is intended by the PragerU stuff. No clue. There was that announcement on Monday that actually caught the current superintendent's staff off guard.
Right.
Like they didn't even know she was doing that. I will tell you something is not right with that deal. There's obviously somebody is getting and making money from that.
Right.
I don't envision we would be required to use that stuff. And quite frankly, for every one video that might be decent in that, there are 10 others that are horrifically bad. So we don't know where that's going. Certainly, it is incumbent upon the legislature to actually exercise some oversight here and figure out what is the genesis of this deal, what is the intent of this deal, where are we going with this deal, and who's getting rich from this deal. And it remains to be seen whether they'll take that up.
Yeah, it's amazing to me that part of the campaign too was that schools are indoctrinating kids into woke leftist whatever, and then you get into office and then you do outright clearly attempt to indoctrinate kids with this PragerU stuff. That's like you've mentioned. I've seen this stuff on Frederick Douglass, the stuff on Christopher Columbus. It's just
Mm.
outrageously, uh, you know, it's just garbage. And I mean, it's not worth. I would strongly encourage any educator out there watching not to use any of it. Certainly take a look at
Well,
it,
I,
but I wouldn't touch that with a 10-foot pole.
well, Todd, I think they need to do their own homework.
Yeah,
I think that's part of the problem we face. We as teachers are not completely innocent here.
right.
Um, First of all, 5 years ago, or 6 years ago now, this spring, we had that Spirit of 2019, that massive rally at the State House, and then got hit by COVID,
Yep.
and everybody just went away and haven't come back. I think teachers need to do their homework. I think teachers need to be more engaged in some of the professional development opportunities that are out there.
Mm,
I had the privilege to speak Monday, as I mentioned, down at Hopsawee Plantation in a joint venture of the American Revolution Institute, Georgetown County Schools, to teachers from Florence and Georgetown and Horry. And those are things we need to be embracing. But we also need schools and districts to provide more or less individualized professional developments for our teachers of
right.
history versus the typical one size fits all deal
Yes.
that we all have had to sit through over 3
Yes,
decades.
and that gets me to the point that I wanted to really I resonated a lot with, because I speak a lot about this, is that you talk about, you said the continued belief that maintaining the antiquated practice of a culture of schooling versus a culture of learning poorly serves our students, especially where teaching the revolution is involved. The obsession with testing embodies this obsolete practice, and I was saying amen to that when I read through that. Talk about how you see this sort of testing overlord, and how it impacts our capacity to teach and really kind of explore with students and teach them, like you said, not what to think, but how to think, how to
Right.
learn, how to develop their own critical reasoning skills, to take in information and then piece it together to develop their own worldviews.
Well, it starts with this. And first of all, I am blessed to teach at a school at River Bluff High School that since our inception of 2013, we have established the culture of learning. So I know what that looks like. And I would love to share that with others in the state. But at the same time, many of the practices of district at the district level or the state level is still, we need to score, we need to score, we need to
Yeah.
score. Well, then that puts pressures on teachers, even though we have never been pressured at River Bluff on test scores. And we're one of the highest performing schools in our district in the state. But that puts pressure to teach to the test. And so a run through of American history from 1619 to 2020 sounds like an auctioneer is doing it.
Right. Yeah.
Columbus landed, and then you got American Revolution, Declaration of Independence, you got a Civil War, North winds, and you move on. Who in the world learns
Right.
anything from that? And then at the end of the day, what do our students learn? Who knows? Because all we get is a number
Right.
and a letter grade. You don't have the higher number and the better letter grades, then you might find yourself at the opening of a school year in a 2-hour professional development with every social studies teacher in a district, where you get lectured on test scores by someone who maybe only taught a couple years in a
Amen.
classroom.
Amen.
And that's the problem we face. But it only fixes itself if not just teachers rise up, but the community rises up to the challenge. And that's been the lesson over these 30 appearances since 2023. I have spoken to predominantly older conservative audiences, and everything you read and much of what we discussed, they are amening about. They just need a direction of who to talk to and what to do and how to do it. And maybe teachers need that as well. But I promise you, the great silent majority of South Carolinians are not happy with what they're getting in terms of their children learning what America is, what it means to be an American, and their children's development into active, informed, involved citizens.
Yeah.
They're just not.
Yeah, I think what you're describing is teaching it's a mile wide and an inch deep, and when you do that, you don't really instill any kind of uh, uh, enthusiasm for the subject matter, because as soon as you cover one area, you're already on to the next, and you can't go deep into it and really
Right.
do that sort of, those of us who went to school for education 30 years ago learned about the importance of inquiry and the importance of following students' curiosity and what they're naturally passionate about. And I think it was Neil Postman who said they start as question marks and then they end as periods. And I think it's this sort of EOC data driven nonsense that makes the test the god, that stands in the way of teachers actually being able to do we really
Oh yeah.
should be doing, which is helping students ignite their interest in a particular subject and following that interest, guiding them with our expertise through that information so that they leave, they want to learn more. Not like I'm just going to cram and memorize
Right.
it for a test and a bubble in test and memorize it, and then 3 months later I don't remember any of it because it didn't connect with me.
And then we wonder, why our society is so fractured. And then we wonder why people today really do not understand what America is and what it means to be an American citizen.
Yeah.
How can they, if you're just being force-fed facts, expected to regurgitate it, and all that teacher gets is a single test score and a letter grade, which by the way, to the taxpayers out there, we have been bankrolling now since roughly 2008 to the tune of millions. And the data we get, absolutely useless. Your tax dollars subsidizing a totally fruitless, meaningless process in terms of assessing our students.
I couldn't agree with you more. I mean, and we spend as a country $1.7 billion each year on standardized testing. And like you said, we're not even getting immediate results on it that can actually help us modify the teaching in the moment when we need that data. It's like you get it the
Right.
next fall, and then the student's already not even in your class anymore. They moved on.
Right.
It makes no sense with the technology that we have and the ability we have to assess students formally, informally, using the technology that we have. Why we still insist upon these bubble in tests, these standardized tests, and enrich these companies when we should be trusting expert teachers like you. And you talked about autonomy, giving autonomy back to teachers, because that's actually the thing in my mind, along with pay and better working conditions, giving the autonomy back to the great teachers like you. That's what keeps people in the profession. When you make them teach to the test and it becomes kill and skill, drill, whatever, kill and drill and kill. And it's all about like, hey, test, score, make sure you get that data up.
Right.
Then people lose their passion and they go and say, oh, I can get paid much better to do something else with the skill set that I have. I'm creative, I'm passionate, I care about this stuff. I can go somewhere else and apply those skills in a place where my passions and my energy is honored. And so I hear what you're saying.
I might add, Todd, that's one of the things that's amazing about having a so-called conservative legislature and superintendent of ed. They have actually increased the size and the scope and the control of government over education in the state, whether it's at the state level or whether it's at the district level, because of how districts have responded to the instructional material stuff, the controversial issue stuff.
Right.
That while they pass these laws, they don't see that how I know there's one district out there that everything you use has to be run through someone at the district.
Yeah.
Or here's a better one, Todd. Here's a better one. In Horry County, Carolina Forest annually participates in the We the People, the Citizenship and the Constitution competition. It's something that we at River Bluff have done out of the law center in which I'm blessed to teach. We've won it 7 of the last 9 years. Carolina Forest is our tightest competitor. We learned this year they're not coming to the state competition because their district, in response to what was passed by the legislature on instructional materials, issued a blanket, because we know planners and organizers love to do what's easiest for planners and organizers, a blanket, nothing you cannot use anything that has not already, for the school year, been approved by the State Department of Ed.
Right.
We the People carries with it a textbook and a curriculum. We don't really use it. We actually just use the Constitution. And so they weren't allowed to attend. Think about that. The consequences of their legislation with poor guidance from the State Department of Ed leading a district to deprive students of an incredibly deep understanding of the Constitution and the Bill of
Right.
Rights. What are we doing
Well,
here?
it's a
If we're doing stuff like
it's
that.
actually, yeah, it is a betrayal of what I've come to learn as a conservative value is you want control at the local level, right? You don't want this, hierarchy where somebody way above you is controlling and telling you and dictating to every single policy, everything that you do. And this idea that
Right.
what we've done, Deborah Meyer, one of my favorite education writers, talks about the locus of control has shifted so far away from the classroom. It comes from the U.S. Department of Education to the State Department of Education. By the time it makes its way to the district office, to the school level administration, to your classroom, I mean, the classroom teacher is left with, very little control over
Mhm.
what's being taught, the pace that is being taught, how it's going to be assessed. And to me, that's been hugely damaging to our profession and really prevents the great teachers from being great because a lot of other people have used this metaphor. It's like forcing a paint by numbers kind of situation. And if
Right.
you're an
Right.
artist like you are, if you're a true artist, it's offensive to be told here, put orange in this part and put purple over here. Like that is such an offensive and such a limiting, stifling environment to try to work in. And I think so I sense your frustration, and I know a lot of other people share that.
But if I might add, and the way to fight this stuff is we have to understand our worth right now. There is a teacher shortage. There's a high demand for teachers. There's a low supply. No offense, guys. They are not going to replace us.
Yeah.
Why? Because they can't replace
Right.
us. That doesn't mean be disrespectful. That doesn't mean just rabble rouse all over the place. But that does mean it is incumbent upon each and every teacher, whether you're facing censorship or facing someone from the district office trying to make you paint by the numbers, to speak up and speak up collectively.
Yeah.
Speak to your and go up the chain of command. Don't be afraid of your school board. They're normal. Most of them are normal human beings. They don't tack their britches up on the wall and jump into them. They put them on one leg at a time, just like you and I do.
Right.
And so that conversation, teachers have to understand these fears we have about being, attacked and being fired are totally irrational because they can't do it unless you violate some law.
Right.
I mean, come on now. But you got to let it be known. You got to let the community know.
Yeah.
That's one of the reasons why, I say all the time, I'll go anywhere to anybody at any time to talk about the soul of America and the challenges of this stuff. Because I believe people, if you inform them of the truth, they will do the right thing, which is to support their teachers in order to gain a better education for their students.
Right. I think so much is about command and control. It's like people, and I don't want to call out anybody in particular, but district offices or state departments, they're so obsessed with making sure that there's fidelity in what everybody's doing, that if they buy a curriculum or buy a piece of technology, whatever, that everybody has to be doing it, because then the taxpayer will say, well, why isn't everybody using it? If he's not using it, why? It's like this whole system of command and control it's almost like they see it as some type of grand science experiment, that if we can control every variable and make every teacher do things this particular way, that we can control the outcome, and then we can improve the metrics the next year by manipulating maybe one other variable. And it's a soulless, dehumanizing way of looking at a human process, which is to be educated.
And it's been shown to be an abject failure. I mean, it's so that mindset is so outdated, and yet you see it all the time today. And I literally mean today, in this school year, where district offices feel like they want to go back to 2005 and on common ground and all that just stuff that was shown not to work, and implement it again because it gives them that control. And once again, if everybody is doing the same thing at the same time, it's just easier for your planners and organizers at the different levels of bureaucracy to enjoy the comforts of their day.
Yeah, I mean, I know teachers who have to have the same lesson plan, same homework. If you're on, say, a sixth grade, if you're a sixth grade math teacher, for example, and you're on a team, all the other sixth grade math teachers are doing the same thing on the board, and it's so that when the administrator comes around, they're evaluating the exact same thing, and so that if parents call or if students, have complaints, whatever, they say, well, they're all doing the same thing, and it is just it's not I think it's one of the main things that's eroding the profession and really driving good people away and preventing us from really recruiting outstanding people who, I mean, I know young people that I recruited into the profession, and they're like, it's gotten worse in the past 10 to 15 years for them, and I'm really saddened for them. I want to get to this question that Mary Rita asked. She said, in your opinion, Michael, how can educators fight the censorship they're facing when choosing their curriculum?
Well, I think that's a case of where teachers need to make their voice heard, and that means, and these are things I've done. This is not me sitting on as an armchair quarterback saying, "Oh, you need to do this, and it's good for you." I've done it. Whether it's reaching out to the media, I've been willing and to give interviews and give quotes and comment on things to the Post and Courier, to State and other outlets. Whether it is use social media to your advantage.
Yeah.
Let your followers know what is happening to you and your fellow teachers in the classroom. Go speak at the board meeting. Again, there's a shortage of teachers.
Yeah.
They're not going to get rid of us all, and or any of us, in fact. But there's this like, it feels like some voodoo curse. Well, if you go speak to the board member, the next day they're going to move your classroom to a tent out in the woods surrounded by wolves.
Yeah.
And that's just not true. Go speak to groups. Groups love to hear from teachers, but it means you've got to be willing to put yourself out there. And I believe in 2019, we had a lot of teachers who were willing to put themselves out
Yes.
there. And somehow we need to recapture the spirit of 2019.
I've been saying that.
And keep in mind,
I've been saying that too, Michael, because I was there on that day, and it's like then COVID hit and it killed all the momentum that I think people felt on that day. Like, okay, there's a lot of us here and we're ready to move. And then COVID came in, and then we never went back and recaptured that feeling, that passion that coalesced on that one day. For those who don't know, May 1st, 2019, there was this huge rally, All Out May, All Out May, and then there was 10,000 people in Columbia around the State House protesting and standing up for public education. But sorry, go ahead, Michael.
Right. So it's ironic that you were there, and I was one of the speakers that day up front. I'm the answer if there's ever a Trivial Pursuit question on May 1st, 2019. Who's the only Republican to get up there at the rally and speak? And it was me. And then like 2 weeks later, when the South Carolina Republican Party had their convention at River Bluff, and I'm the liaison in that situation, I got scolded by the then sitting superintendent of ed for being the only Republican out there. And my answer to her was, well, why weren't you there?
Right.
As you are supposedly supposed to be defending our schools and defending us. And maybe it doesn't take a big, huge rally. Maybe it just takes a resurgent activism where people are starting to come together in their communities and speak out about this stuff.
Yeah.
Talk about the fact that you have English teachers who at the beginning of the year literally were having conversations about how they can't teach Shakespeare, Romeo and Juliet, and they might not be able to teach To Kill a Mockingbird. Now it's been supported. You had the general feel from teachers I know across the state that the opening day this year, the theme was 1,000 ways I can get fired.
Right.
And 1,000 other ways that if I don't do certain things, I can get fired.
Right.
I think the time has come, and this is the first year of a 2-year legislative session. If there was one mistake with May 1st is that it was May 1st, that perhaps it needed to happen earlier to give us a few more months. But even with that, when COVID ground the world to a halt, there were two different versions of ed reform bills, one in the House, one in the Senate. And as the author of the Teacher Bill of Rights that had been introduced, it filed in December 2018 and introduced in 2019, there was a version of Teacher Bill of Rights in each the House and the Senate version in 2020. Now, was everybody in the teaching activist community on board with that? Well, no. There was a filibuster from a good friend of mine about it. But then that's where I'll fall back on my Reagan. If you can get 60 to 65% of what you want, take it. And then work it like heck to go back and get the other 40 to 35%. But there were some that were like, well, we need to have all or nothing. I don't know how that would have played out. I think, had there not been COVID, we would have gotten a bill. Maybe it only gives us 50 to 60% of what we want, but it would have further fueled this movement, this grassroots movement of teachers who represented all ideologies, who represented both political parties, who represented every demographic to continue to move forward. And perhaps it would have turned to honestly the level where a lot of this stuff needs to be addressed, and that is the district level. That I would argue, if given the choice to blame the legislature or the district or district offices across the state for the issues that plague us, I'm going to go with district offices and school boards, that there's some real problems there. And while you can do certain things at the state level, it's really, as the saying goes, all politics is local. And you start with your school board and your district office and you try to make a difference and a change there.
I want to ask you one final question, because you talk about, like being very pragmatic about, what we can accomplish if we come together. One of the issues, and we've talked about this a bit. When I write about a lot of different things in this space, education policy. And when I write about standardized testing and the over testing and the test and punish paradigm that we were in, that we've been in since Nation at Risk, everybody on the left and the right agrees. The people who are the furthest right friends that I have love the post. The people the furthest left and everybody in between seems to agree. And what I don't understand, and maybe you can shed some light on this, is why is it when pretty much everybody sees that this testing paradigm that we're in, this test and punish paradigm that we're in, is damaging public schools? Why do we continue to do it? Why can't we at least come together on this one issue that we agree on?
And I think with that, the problem is what you just said, coming together. If you look at the civil rights movement, and I think that's instructive for our struggle, do we have the people in this state, the leadership at the grassroots level at this state to bring people together like a Dr. King, or bring people together like a Malcolm X, or bring people together like a John Lewis, to create that momentum for change? I literally think people are ready. They just need someone or someones to rally around.
Right.
And we have to be able to use social media to bring folks together, et cetera. And I would like to add this, and to make it clear, there is such thing as conservative education reform. It's not the ghost hunt, the Red Scare of the 21st century. It is not, hey, let's take public money and pay for private school tuition. You can have a public school choice plan that I have pushed for almost a decade that is pretty daggum good based on what they do in Nebraska. But conservative reform starts with our biggest problem, the bureaucracy we face at the district and state level. It starts there. I mean, what do all those people do at our different district offices? What do all those people do at the State Department of Education? I think as a conservative, as a like I said, my if she's out there, my 8th grade English teacher, Miss Bramlett, is retired, but maybe she's watching her former student. And for a month, she made me Ronald Reagan, and she like made me be a method actor, Ronald Reagan. Um, his belief in the scariest words in the English language are, I'm from the government, I'm here to help. Well, that's sort of like, I'm from the State Department of Ed, I'm here to help, or I'm from the district office, I'm here to help. That should frighten teachers.
Right.
And I think conservative Republicans really should rally around that principle of autonomy. We believe in local government. Well, local government in the education sense is letting the teachers and the students and the administrators and parents at that individual school make the decisions that are best for those students at that school.
100%. And I'm pretty far to the left, and that's music to my ears too. Because to me, that's what it's all about. I mean, in my 30 years in education, that's what I've seen. I've just seen the loss of autonomy, and that to me, like, obviously we need to pay teachers more. Obviously they need planning time, and they need the resources and the support and the kind of good quality, relevant professional learning, all that. But if they don't have the autonomy, it's just soul crushing. It's soul crushing, and it hurts not only the teachers, it hurts the students, because you have a teacher that's teaching that is not able to teach from the soul, like that's not able to teach from their own passion. I was lucky enough to be in a subject area where there was no statewide curriculum, there was no EOC, there was no standardized test for it. And I was able to create a curriculum and then see what the students gravitated towards, and then modify it on the fly without having to ask somebody permission from somebody at the district office. And it worked. But so many teachers are handcuffed because they're given a pacing guide and a textbook, and they're told this is what you're going to do and when you're going to do it. And it's just, I think great teachers like you figure out workarounds and figure out how to work within that system. But imagine if you were just liberated from that.
Yeah, and I don't really have to work around it. If people are asking, well, how do we do this? How do we change this? Come to River Bluff. We've done it. We've made our mistakes. We've had trial and error. But I am again blessed to work for a leadership team at River Bluff that embraces a culture of learning, gives teachers autonomy. They will fight tooth and nail with the district office when things come down the pike that they understand are not good for our students. And so if you're looking for a model, and again, we're not perfect. We're far from perfect. We're always, having to improve ourselves and change things and tweak things. But if people are like, well, how do we do this? Come to River Bluff. We'll show you what we do. And you don't even have to have a fancy campus. You don't even have to have a certain group of students. Our approach will work at any school in any part of the state. People just got to be willing to take that leap of faith and make the needed changes.
Excellent. Well, Michael, we're running up on 8 o'clock. I want to thank you for your time, for your passion, for the conversation. It was a great conversation, and I hope that folks, if they're just tuning in, will go back and listen to the whole thing, because I think you said a lot of important things, and one of the things that sticks with me is that it's really time for educators to stand up and to speak out and to come together, and to set aside maybe some of the differences, come together, and to push for the things that we need: autonomy, and end to this overemphasis on testing, and getting back to removing the politics out of the decision making, and really allowing teachers to teach without this sort of storm cloud or shadow of like worrying about the political ramifications of just teaching the truth.
Right.
So thank you so much, Michael. I appreciate you.
Well, thank you for having me on.
All right. Everybody, that's Michael Burgess. Again, I want to thank Mary Rita Watson for not only tuning in, but for suggesting to bring Michael on. It was a wonderful conversation, and really appreciate his time, and appreciate all the folks at the SCEA and their recommendations. If you have recommendations for future live stream guests, you can always email me at toddschul@gmail.com, and you can find All of my contact information on our website at the Cool website is cool.us right here, cewl.us. And of course, I want to give a big shout out to the South Carolina Education Association. If you are an educator and you are inspired tonight and you're ready to stand up and fight with us at the SCEA, you can join us right now at jointhescea.org. When you join us, you're not just joining the South Carolina Education Association, you're also joining your local association and the National Education Association, the NEA, which is the largest labor union in the United States with 3.2 million members. And we are so proud to be working with NEA. They are the grant that supplied us the capacity to bring you tonight's live stream and everything we do at Cool. A couple of things we have coming up that I wanted to promote. First of all, if you've not been tuning in, Alex Del Castillo has been managing a lot of the stuff that we do on Instagram and TikTok. I am in my 50s, so Instagram is, I don't know, for me it's like not a native thing, and TikTok I'm trying to learn it, but Alex has done a great job at creating all kinds of content over on TikTok and Instagram. So if you're not following the SCEA and you're on Instagram or TikTok, check out the SCEA over there, and you can check out all of his episodes of Cool Yoga, which he does on Wednesday evenings. He did it tonight. It's called Wind Down Wednesday, and it's just free yoga resources. Also, every Tuesday and Thursday night online, you can receive free one-to-one support if you are an induction teacher in a public school in South Carolina. Angie Brush, Stephanie Johnson, and Dr. Marcella Weinsnyder are online every Tuesday and Thursday from 6 to 8 o'clock, and you can go in live and ask them questions and get free unfiltered quality advice about the things going on in your classroom. And you can do that. All you have to do is go to cool.us/coaching. That's cool.us/coaching. I want to, this is the first time I've announced this publicly, but we are going to have 2 educator wellness retreats this summer. The registration or the application to attend is not up yet, but I want you to look at these dates and hold these dates and start thinking about whether or not you want to attend. There's 2 retreats. It's June 25th through the 27th and July 23rd through the 25th. It'll be held in Old Fort, North Carolina. And yes, they were affected by Hurricane Helene, but they are rebuilding and recovering, and everything should be good by the springtime, I was told. And certainly by summertime, they're going to be ready to go. And it's Indigo Retreat Center. It is a beautiful, beautiful retreat center. You can find out more information at cool.us/retreat. It'll sort of show you what to expect from our wellness retreats. We do yoga, we do mindfulness practices, we talk about self-care, we do walking practices, and it's just in this gorgeous setting. You get all your meals included, your lodging included, and it's only $150 for members of the SCEA, $250 for people who are not members of the SCEA. So if you've been thinking about joining the SCEA and you want to go on this retreat, join, and you're going to get $100 off the retreat, and that's pretty amazing, right? So it's a huge incentive for you to consider joining the SCEA, and then you can find out about all the other benefits that we have because you're a member of the NEA. You get all of NEA's benefits, and you're going to get all the SCEA benefits. Plus, you're going to get connected with your local association. If you have not seen this yet, very relevant to tonight's conversation, Pete Stone released a new video this week called "Say No to Scripted Lessons." Really, really powerful video, sort of critiquing this idea of scripted lessons. Next week, actually, it's in 2 weeks, I'm going to be doing a session on how to start a meditation practice. So if you're like me, the new year, you start to think about some habits. Fortunately, I've started some new habits about 3 months ago, and really am starting to see some of the benefits of those practices. Really have been investing in my wellness. And I want to encourage everybody to, as you go into this year, to really start thinking about your wellness in a really holistic and sustainable way. And for me, the foundational thing that really helped me in my wellness journey is starting a meditation practice. Because when I started to quiet my mind and started to sort of de-stress, I started to also see some of the other decisions I was making with regards to my nutrition, my exercise, my relationships, um, and just the way I was carrying myself and the priorities I had. And it's been really, really instrumental, this meditation practice. So if you're interested, 2 weeks on the 22nd at 7 o'clock, well, I'll be talking about how to start a meditation practice. We'll do a guided practice together, and then I'll take any questions that you have. So that is about it for right now. Again, I want to thank Sherry East, you tuned in, our president. Mary Rita Watson, thanks for tuning in. Todd Jake, our former executive director. Madison Bray, thank you for tuning in. And to everybody else who tuned in tonight, thank you so much for watching our show. And thanks to all the educators in South Carolina. This will be my final message for you tonight. As we enter this new year, there are many battles ahead, and we've got to stick together. We've got to fight together. We also have to take care of ourselves, because if we're expending all this energy and trying to fix the world and we're falling apart on the inside, we're going to end up being wounded warriors, as Dr. Sean Ginwright says in his book, The 4 Pivots. We don't want to go around being wounded warriors. We want to build movements with healed people, with people who are well. So this is why, if we really want to change the world and change things for educators and students, the first thing we need to do is start with our own wellness, with our own health. And so I hope that you will look at the resources we have at COOL, our Center for Educator Wellness and Learning. Take a look at those resources: yoga, nutrition, mindfulness, all kinds of stuff that we have for induction teachers as well. Look at those resources to take care of yourself. And then once you have your oxygen mask on, then we can start worrying about the oxygen mask for other people. We can start taking care of other people's needs, and we can do it from a place of being healed and being whole ourselves. So I hope that you will join us on that wellness journey in 2025, and join us at the SCEA to fight the good fight that we need to wage to protect our public schools from those who want to privatize them and those who want to destroy and dismantle them, and censor history, censor books. We've got to push back on that. And there are smart ways to do that. And I hope that instead of, Jake used to say, instead of agonizing, we got to organize. So I hope that you will organize with us, start within, and then let's move without, and take care of things. And I believe, I know a lot of people are feeling discouraged right now, but I'm choosing to be optimistic, and I'm choosing to look forward to the future in a way that is going to be bright and hopeful. And I believe that in the end, good will win, love will win, and that we will have a state and a country that is guided by love and wisdom. And I think we need to make that happen together. So we will see you next week on another live stream. Until then, have a wonderful rest of your week. And for those of you in the path of the snowstorm, stay warm.